Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Rebekah from down here in the deep south state of Mississippi. I am so excited to join y'all today, and thanks, Rudy, for that nice introduction. I do want to borrow one of Rudy's phrases that I love. He is one cool cat, so I'm glad y'all got to hear from him this morning or this afternoon. But I'm excited to introduce my friend and colleague and occasional competitor in the game of pool, Mississippi State Senator Juan Barrett. Juan, how are you doing? And I think you're on mute, Juan.
Good morning. I can't hear anyone.
All right. Okay, Juan, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I can't. Can you all hear me?
We can, Juan. Oh no.
I can't hear.
Oh gosh. The Aspen folks might need to help us out here.
Juan, make sure that you are off interpretation and switch back to no Spanish interpretation. That might be the problem.
Pardon us while we have some technical difficulties. Juan, can you hear us now?
Hey, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I can't hear anything that you are saying at the moment. Can you send me a text, Rebecca, and I could just...
Yes, I will do that. Okay, so I want everyone to know that Juan is the chair of the Senate Corrections Committee in Mississippi. And he was actually a victim of violent crime. His dad was murdered when he was 20. But yet he works in Mississippi politics to enact criminal justice reform. So I'm asking Juan to tell us about that. But I'm sending him a text real quick. All right. You should have it, Juan. Check your phone. And y'all will see Juan is actually at work this morning. He actually works for a telephone company with my father. So that is one personal connection Juan and I have together.
Again, I apologize for this. And yes, Rebecca, I am an individual who has suffered a violent crime in my life. Not me this per se, but my father was murdered back in 1991 when I was deployed to the Gulf War. He was murdered on a Super Bowl Sunday. And because of the movement across the desert, I didn't find out until that following Wednesday. And it was a devastating time in my life. I was the oldest of 4 children at the time, and deployed around the world. And to get news like that is really devastating. And it actually took me some years to finally come to be able to deal with it. And to be honest with you, the only way that I was able to deal with it is that, I just had to just let go and just let God handle it for me. And when I began to forgive the individual who had murdered my father and his family, then things in my life began to change. I began to look at individuals who had been incarcerated for long periods of time, and was never really given a second chance on life. And, but for a long time, I was like those people who was doing the incarcerating. I felt like regardless of the crime, I just thought that everybody should just do a life sentence, because I felt like the justice system had really let my family and I down, because the individual who murdered my father didn't get much time at all. But then when I began to forgive, it really changed my life. And I think we need to look at that. Everyone needs to look at that, because there are individuals who are incarcerated, who are not necessarily criminals, and need a second chance on life. And I'm just happy to be the chairman of corrections in the Mississippi legislature, and we have done some great work in criminal justice reform in Mississippi. And Rebekah, I'm sorry, I can't like look between phone and your questions and all those kind of things. So I hope what I'm saying is kind of in line with the question that you may be asking. But uh, it has been great here in Mississippi, and I really have to say that, being a Democrat in Mississippi, African American, and it's a red state. The House is supermajority Republican, the Senate is the same way, and then we have a Republican lieutenant governor and a Republican governor. But what makes me feel good is that at the end of the day, when we can all sit down and talk about how do we fix the problems that we have. And one thing that we all have in common is that, we all respect humanity. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of conversation is the fact that we're trying to help humanity. And in a lot of cases, when we're talking about criminal justice reform, is, in my opinion, it's often centered around race. More African Americans being incarcerated than other individuals, and that is a true statement. But at the end of the day, when you talk about humanity, I think at some point we have to not necessarily make race a topic of our discussion. I think we should be talking about how do we help people, period, regardless of what race they may be from, regardless of what religion they may have, regardless of their sex, regardless of their gender, regardless of all of those things. How do we help individuals? How do we move an individual from being a burden on the taxpayers to being taxpayers themselves? And so, with several pieces of legislation that we have passed in Mississippi, I think we have done a great job, and it has gotten attention around the country. Because I get a lot of phone calls from people like, "Hey, how in the world does an African American Democrat in Mississippi cross those political lines and to get a Republican lieutenant governor and a Republican speaker and a Republican governor to all agree and sign legislation in regards to criminal justice reform?" And my answer to them is that, number one, you have to be willing to reach across the aisle or walk across the aisle and talk about those things, and be not just talk about it, but be willing to hear from the other side, and be able to, and just to be able to talk about what really, really matters. And at the end of the day, if we could talk about those things, I think we get a lot of things done, but oftentimes, I find it that, regardless, because of the party that I'm in, then I think that has a lot to do with people willing to work together, because sometimes we let party divide us, and that shouldn't be an issue. It should be about the people that we serve. And again, it shouldn't be regardless of what party or race or whatever. It should always be about trying to help. And that's just one of the things I enjoy doing. So.
All right, Juan. Well, thank you so much. I know you can't hear me, but if he could, I'd ask him when we're going to play pool again. I always lose, by the way.